If you do not like someone's story, write your own. Changing Narratives with Wambui Kabage.
Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we will be discussing the Marriage Act of 2014 and the different categories of marriages that you are able to get into. You may be asking, why is this important? I can tell you one thing. It's so critical to understand the category or the type of marriage that you enter into, because later on you'll understand that, especially after we go through these series, that there are implications to being married in certain types of categories. So the first category we're going to be discussing is monogamy. Monogamy. Monogamy is where you have one man married to one woman. And in Kenya, and I really do appreciate the Marriage Act, because what it's done is it has recognized the different kinds of relationships and acknowledged the different customs and faiths that make up this beautiful nation of ours that is Kenya. And what it's done, it's codified, meaning it's brought into law and recognized each of these different categories and forms of marriages and formalized them, but also put them all on an even playing field. What does that mean? Previously, what we used to do is, you get married into a certain category or a certain religious rites, and then you go and formalize it in another way because the first marriage was really not recognized. But what the Marriage Act of 2014 has done is it's given all these wonderful ways of celebrating marriages in different and beautiful ways, a platform that is on equal playing field. So the first category we're going to be discussing, as I mentioned, is monogamy. Now, with monogamy, there are three types of marriages that really lend themselves to monogamy. What does that mean? It means that if you marry under these categories, you can only marry one wife. As a man, it is one man and one woman. And those are the Christian marriage. The Christian marriage is the first marriage that I'm going to discuss. And essentially what that is for people who profess the Christian faith, who decide they want to celebrate their marriage under whichever denomination of Christianity that they wish to get married under. What they need to do is get an officiant who is registered, meaning either you get a priest who is acknowledged by your church as a person who is legally permitted and has been registered as a person able to conduct your ceremony. That is very important, because if you go back to the conversation that I had previously, which was you must be very careful to select someone or an officiant who's going to celebrate your marriage, who is actually recognized by the law as somebody who can do that. And so that's the importance, right? So now from that point on, let's move on. If we're saying that under the Christian marriage, you can only marry one wife as a man, what does that mean? It means that you cannot go on later on and marry somebody else. Okay, and it'll come clear because you'll understand in Kenya there are other forms of marriages that do permit this. But if you married under the Christian law, then you cannot marry another wife. The second category of marriage, which is under monogamy, is a civil marriage. A civil marriage is where you go to Sharia house, for example, and there is a registrar who is a marriage registrar, and he or she will officiate your ceremony. Now, in that category as well, you can only be one man, one woman. The next category is the Hindu marriage. Now, the Hindu marriage is where you profess the Hindu faith. Right? And that in Kenya has been divided into the Jain community, the Sikh community, as well as the Hindu community. They've been categorized as one group, which is the Hindus. And they are permitted to get married only one man, one woman. Okay? So if you officiate your marriage under these three categories, civil, Christian, and Hindu, you are categorized as having married under the laws of monogamy. So guys, look, it's really very important that you understand that when you get into a monogamous marriage, you can't now decide halfway through that oh my goodness, my culture has, permitted me to marry many wives, and therefore, despite the fact that you've celebrated your marriage under one of those three categories that I mentioned, I'm going to go off and marry another wife. I'm sorry. That is not going to be a legal marriage at all. And in fact, it's not even going to be recognized under the law. Okay, so it's very important as we go back to these conversations about values and understanding expectations when we get into relationships. It's so important to talk about these issues, and it's so important to know which category that you want to get married under, because then later on you avoid these conflicts that arise as a result of these misunderstandings or lack of conversations that surround the issue of how you want to solemnize your relationship. It's really important for me to highlight that once you have celebrated your marriages, being the civil marriage or the Christian marriage or the Hindu marriage, you must register your marriage. What does that mean? The registrar must take your documentation within 14 days of your marriage to be registered. What does that mean? It means that your marriage will be recognized. Why is that important? Because it averts conflict later on. You won't have challenges of whether you are married or not married, questions of later on if somebody passes on, is this, conversations like that create conflict. You want to avoid those. You want to be able to say, yes, you are registered legally and it is a recognizable marriage. So taking all this in mind, everybody, please let your friends know, all the people that you're aware are about to get into marriages, that these are really important factors that they must take into consideration. I hope you benefit from this. Like, share, and subscribe.